Cool.
back.
Good afternoon. It's a really hot one out there. So should we just start with introductions?
Sure.
Great, I'll start. My name is Garrett McDaniel. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator here at the Town of Lyons. I'm the one that put together this RFP, so I'm here to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Kathy Carroll, Western Disposal.
Bryce Isaacson, Western Disposal. Eric Luke with Western Disposal.
Allison Westfall, one way.
I usually overlay.
Perfect.
Kim Mitchell with the Town Alliance. We'll be communicating
What happens?
Yeah. Awesome, thank you for signing in. So really this is a time for you to ask any sort of clarifying questions. The Town of Lyons, I'm sure, is unique like many other communities along the Front Range. We've never done a pay-as-you-throw program. We've never worked with potentially the idea of having a single hauler. So we are much in the experimental phase as well. So we're really looking for a partner to help us sort of push this program along. So this is your time to ask any sort of clarifying questions. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Let's start.
Sure.
So it's implied, I think, but not expressed, whether or not recycling should be unit-based priced or is supposed to be embedded in the trash rate. So what are you looking for there?
We're looking at to be embedded.
Embedded,
Yeah,
okay.
so the thought would be that there's one price for waste, composting, and recycling. And recycling, I know like for like Louisville, or Lafayette, they just do a standard 96 gallon bin for recycling. And that there's not really an option. Now, if your companies have different options for recycling, then feel free to spell it out. But just for the simplicity of this RFP, I just want to know what's the cost for, having the recycling, composting, and trash. And the different scenarios are listed in here. So we've got like a weekly pickup for trash, and then bi-weekly for composting and recycling, or weekly for all three. I imagine the weekly for all three is going to be pretty pricey, and we're probably not going to go down that route, but I'd like to be able to show that to the Board of Trustees to say, hey, we could do this, but it's going to cost our
Okay, we're going to embed, what you're saying here is a 64 or a 96. You're not looking for a 32 on the recycling.
Right.
Okay, so that'll be one price, and then your compost, though, you do want it broken out unit-based.
Because Lafayette's is unit-based. So in Lafayette, you subscribe to 32 or 64 or 96 trash, and you get your
Yeah.
recycle with that.
Right.
Most people have a 96, but then you buy your compost outside of the recycling embedded in the trash by the 32 gallon unit.
Oh, the compost is a separate.
Yes.
Gotcha.
It
And
has
that's
a-
what you're saying in here.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because then if you don't decide to do compost and you just
Yeah.
do trash and recycle, then you can see the difference in cost, because like either of these things that, particularly now with recycling, it costs more to dispose of or to go to than it is to bury.
Right.
That's a critical mass now. It's not, recycling isn't free anymore, and consequently it's more than trash. And even when you infer in here that composting has to be less than trash, well, that doesn't fit the real world model. It costs more to compost than it does to bury the material, so therefore
Gotcha.
that's not a.
Yeah. So we're also learning all of this
Yeah.
too. So I think having that compost, as you talked about, broken out separately, I think that would be good to have.
Because if you asked us to price compost less than trash, you have to inflate the recycling and the trash service
To make up for the
to
cost.
make up for the difference, because it isn't less in cost, it's more in cost, and then therefore,
Yeah.
I mean, it ought to stand on its own, and then you can see what the cost of the different pieces are as a specific to what they really are, not by
Right.
transferring costs from one line item to another line item.
Yeah.
And I think too, from one of our meetings, it seemed like the Board of Trustees was really intrigued by the compost option, for several reasons, but that's why I think including composting is one of the ideas that they're debating or wanting to get more information on.
So this would give them the ability to look at a pay-as-you-throw system with embedded recycling and composting as an option, as an optional add-on.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that how, and sorry if I'm not totally with it, but so the pricing would be, here's trash and recycling, and then if the resident wants to add on composting.
Well, everybody would have to have composting, but they would pay for it by the amount that they
The size of their container.
subscribe to. Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
gotcha.
But at least from our perspective, in order to be able to provide the service for the price, we would have to know that everyone that was enrolled was going to be enrolled in the
Gotcha.
composting
So the
as
default
well.
would be the 32-gallon compost, even if you didn't sign up.
Because
Yeah.
currently both Lafayette and Louisville, until September 1st starts, is you're defaulted to a 32. You can't opt out of the program.
For a compost,
So even if
yeah.
you say, don't bring me a compost cart, well, you're being billed for a 32.
Yeah.
And just from, having experience with Louisville, this fine line between if you're going to do it, you need to rewrite your ordinance that they have to subscribe. Because you're in this fight with legally because, well, that's what the city intended, but that's exactly what it says.
Mhm.
And so, again, you have to, whether you call it a carrot or a stick, you have to have that, you have to pay for it whether you use it or not.
Yeah, we understand that policy has to come into play with the program, so that's something that we'll certainly be following along with.
And that begets another question too, because in here you talk about a CPI increase. And I don't know if you're familiar that the state legislature passed a landfill surcharge this year. So
Right.
we're all gonna get a normal landfill increase. The increase for the surcharge is gonna be more than our normal landfill increase, which
Yeah.
then is gonna be nowhere near the CPI, for example, and that's going to propagate for 3 additional years
Mm.
after the first one goes into effect this January. And then if you look at the drop-off fees for recycling, a year ago, we were paying nothing.
Yeah.
Now we're both
Right.
paying $32.50 a ton. That is not moving at the
Yeah.
pace of the CPI.
Gotcha.
So, and then, it's just, I think that to try to tie, I don't think any of us can promise what's going to happen. We have zero control over what the county's doing. How long is this recycling market gonna be the way it is? It's been climbing from 0 to 32.50 in 12 months. That's significant. And then not being able to pass on that tipping fee that's
Yeah.
problematic.
So how are other communities working with that fee? How are you able to?
They don't really, they're taking ownership of the recycling,
Yes.
which is actually a key point of discussion here, is that a lot of these towns and institutions take responsibility to pay the tipping fees for the recycling. So they take,
Okay. Lafayette
so that you
both
can
do.
level out
Gotcha.
the cost to the consumer, but the municipality or the institution is taking responsibility for the tonnages and working directly with the recycling center to pay. And when it's a rebate, that's, that goes to your advantage as well. We haven't seen that situation in a while.
I think it helps, just from maybe, if we end up having to talk to the residents again or anything, but kind of putting it in perspective to the residents. When you actually cause or create a situation where the customer has to pay into it, so they have to pay it into recycle a little bit, they may treat it a lot better than they are right now. Because right now, that's why the recycle market has crashed to a degree, is it's very dirty recycling.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
I have huge problems with that. And then it turns around and then everybody thinks we're throwing it away. And it's, yeah, because grass is not recyclable, that's compost, first of all, and stuff like that. So I think if people actually put a little into it, I think it may help with that whole problem in the first place, which could always in turn bring the market back, but I don't really see that happening. But, you know, I mean, people may need to put something into it to, you know, put some value on it to them, and they may start treating it in a manner where it needs to be treated, because if people can't recycle accordingly, it's just gonna keep crashing, and it's gonna turn into compost. I mean, compost is easily 4 times the cost of trash,
Right.
and it's expensive, you know, and recycling, going up as quick as it did, it became more expensive than trash as well. And so it's just, you gotta maybe put a value on it. It's unfortunate, but you put a value on it, and maybe people will certainly take better care to ensure that everything in there is where it needs to be, or is recyclable and can be cleaned and reused.
So would your idea there be some kind of an index or a surcharge of some kind? What are your thoughts
No,
on that?
I mean, I put it like recycle slightly unit-based, honestly. Isn't that what we're kind of talking about?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
yes.
that, I mean, I hate doing it, but it's like just watching Boulder, the way that goes, you know, just having the compost, because people don't like the compost correctly either. And just, it's something to offset it, because it's a huge charge on both of our accords as far as recycling. I mean, you guys run the compost division, but I mean, I can only imagine what kind of expense that is to you guys running the unit. I mean, you don't have just machines that sort through compost.
The model of the original pay-as-you-throw is no longer really valid in the market that we're in now. And I'll use an example as, because recycling tipping fees have gone, like we just discussed, from 0 to $32.50, and composting is significantly more. The way that they were built was under the assumption that recycling materials have value when all these came into play, for example, in the city of Boulder and Boulder County. And Gallegos brought this kind of to the forefront with the city of Fort Collins, and last year, I think it was, they changed the regulation allowing a material recovery fee. Because if you see recycling doing this, and we pass on a rate increase in January, and we have to guesstimate what we think recycling will be, we can either get hurt because we didn't allow a most conservative enough number, or if it goes down, we can't just automatically lower our rates. You've already passed those on, and so with the material recovery fee, it ebbs and flows every month based on what you're being charged for the tipping fee. So Fort Collins said, in the unit price, you can have a material recovery fee, but it cannot be more than what your unit is. So for example, if you set your threshold at 0, then any number above 0 is going to have a material recovery fee. So let's say Boulder County lowered it from $32.50 to $20. Well, then that material recovery fee would come down. You know, and so I think there needs to be some thought put into the model for the pricing based on, we're not in the same system as when Lafayette went out, Louisville went out, and what kind of cushions that for us, like we discussed, is Louisville and Lafayette both own the recyclables. The hauler delivers them in the name of the community. If they have value, the city gets the money for it. If there's a negative value to it, the city pays for it. And that way you don't have to have this material recovery fee because the hauler isn't at risk for that fluctuation in the, so to me, that would be the ideal, is for the city of, the town of Lyons to take ownership of the recyclable, just like the other communities in the county.
As well as the composting fees as well?
No, because that's not doing,
Okay, that's
you know,
pretty
that has,
standard.
it's not a, you know, something that's completely out of control that's moved, what that percent is, you know, from 0 to 32.50 is not doing that kind of a.
Are we still on what you guys are, just so I understand correctly, are you guys still floating between the two of billed individually, or are you guys covering the so like in Lafayette, the town pays for the service, am I correct?
Well,
Or does it
they
come out
bill
of
the
the
residents
residents'
on the
pockets?
utility bill.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it does it like that, is that what you guys are doing? Like to where it's gonna be on their utility bill, is that the direction you guys are headed with it? Or are you guys hoping to, each resident just has to pay it on their own?
No, it would tie into
Making
the
sure.
utility.
Oh, okay, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Making sure I understood that.
Just a side question on that, did you, did you capture Apple Valley in these 850 numbers since they're on water but not, electric?
I don't think Apple Valley was in the town proper, so.
They are not in the town.
Yeah, I don't
No,
think-
okay, but they're utility customers, so that's
Right.
that's what they've got.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the tipping fee for recycling. I don't know if you've got that one, we haven't talked about that, so I don't know where we sort of stand on that. We'd have to figure out what that cost is.
The reason this started is that we brought up the point that a CPI increase is no longer adequate in the markets that we're in now, with recycling going from 0 to 32.50 in a year. So that's not reasonable to ask the hauler to agree to a CPI increase in subsequent years. So how do you get around that? Well, if the city takes ownership of the recyclables, it takes that risk away from the hauler, just like Lafayette and Louisville did. That's the most, I guess, piece of the puzzle that we have no control over and can vary so dramatically. The
So,
landfill is more predictable than the recycling tipping fee.
It is.
And we're not gonna jack our compost fees, like 0 is, a number that, again, whatever that percentage is, I mean, that isn't gonna happen except for, obviously, recycling is just in a tough spot right now, and it puts a lot of pressure on the hauler that makes it difficult for any hauler to agree to long-term pricing at this kind of a, rate increase.
Cause they change their rates on a monthly basis. Like they'll submit to us whether it's gone up, gone down, on a monthly basis. The landfill doesn't increase or decrease us, but
Well, it's not
I
going
get it
down
here.
in a year.
Right.
Yeah, it hasn't, it just,
I think one other point too is around the country, you're seeing different municipalities change what's acceptable in the single stream. Now, I don't know that that's something going to happen in Boulder, but there's a lot of unknowns. So that's also a risk that we wouldn't be able to, properly judge. And then also just, meeting specifications of what the recycling facility accepts. And if it's not in compliance, and there's additional charges for sorting or it's rejected for trash, those variables then, go back to the entity really, which owns it. So there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense.
I'm sorry, I'm Dan, sorry to be late.
Hi,
I'm the
Dan.
chair of the Sustainable Futures Commission, and I also happen to work for EcoCycle. Bryce, so if the town is responsible for paying the materials recycling fee, so let's say it's $30 a ton right now. So walk me through that again. How is Fort Carlos doing that?
Well, they allowed the hauler to have a material recovery fee based on an agreed to, and I'm assuming it's probably 0, the threshold, and anything over being charged for it then becomes a material recovery fee. Because the argument that Gallegos made for almost 2 years was, it's not fair to, when you have a unit, and they were for a long time trying to absorb that huge increase in the recycling fee. So if you have it in your unit, then if somebody has a 64, they're paying that surcharge twice, and if they have a 96, they're paying it 3 times. So it wasn't fair to 64s and 96s to have to pay that cost of the increased recycling fee multiple times. Because that was the pricing model at a 32, not a 64.96. So if you have to do a rate increase, you have to do it on your unit. And then the unit gets doubled and tripled. And therefore was not fair to the consumer, not fair to the resident. So they said, let us have a material recovery fee so we can do the normal increase for everything but the recycling, and if the recycling is doing this, then we'll adjust our, have agreed-to formula of how that works, but that recovery fee could not exceed the unit charge.
So you're saying, so you would bid it at 0, and then it's the town's responsibility to collect any costs?
Well, it could
beyond
go
that?
either way. In the case of Fort Collins, it wasn't a city program, it was subscription. But just like Boulder and Boulder County, they specified how that model worked. And I was describing that even in Boulder and Boulder County, that really doesn't work anymore. Because what happened last year, okay, you raised the unit charge to make it, or excuse me, the flat monthly fee to make it fair, so that when the 64 and the 96 wasn't being doubled and tripled. Well, now the part of the ordinance says that your unit charge can't be more than your flat monthly fee. Well, now they're about the same. So if recycling stays at $32.50, for example, then we can no longer add more to the unit charge. So we've got to add it to the flat monthly fee to recover that recycling cost. Well, now it's going to get doubled and tripled to the 64s and the 96s, which isn't fair. They have the same amount of recyclables as the 32 does typically. So that model, the idea behind how pay-as-you-throw works in what the market used to be like, say, 5 years ago and what it's like today, it's not the same. Times have changed, and because recycling fees are so high, I mean, that's where that material recovery fee came around, because it's fairer to the consumer. If things are gonna go like this and the hauler has no control over it, then it's only fair that either the hauler gets to recoup it through a material recovery fee, or in this case, the city takes ownership of the recyclables and the hauler doesn't have to build that into their fees. So if it's going like this, the residents aren't being charged. I mean, you have the ability to bill that back. I'm not sure how Lafayette and Louisville recoup that fees they're paying. I'm sure it's probably in their administrative fee that they charge in addition to the hauler's service charge. But just a thought to think about, because for us, I think we both agree, it's a tough out there now where you have no control over some of your tipping fees. And they're just so dramatic, the changes. Like we talked about, landfill's much more predictable. A little more easier to guesstimate what you think's gonna happen.
And that's exactly why I tend to stay away from Boulder where I can. Like, sometimes it can be brutal having huge cycling loads, and then you get that bill in and you're like, oh, I can't charge anybody this, and it's also unlimited. So they can have 2, 3, 4, 96-gallon containers of recycle, and you have to take it. You just have to take it and go. And then, what if you fill up on one load going through Boulder? Then you gotta go drop it off, go continue picking up. So it's all those expenses that just we don't get to incorporate into our rates if someone doesn't take ownership of the cost in those big bids like those.
Yeah, the original premise when Boulder County and Boulder both passed their regulations is recyclables had value.
Yeah.
There was a time when single stream first came in effect, but when it was dual stream, the revenue from those materials was about $1.50 a month. When it went to single stream, the value of those materials dropped to about 75 cents. Well, now at $32.50, the cost per customer is in excess of $1.30 a month. There is no revenue and there's a significant charge. Well, what if it went to 50, which is almost plausible that it could even continue to climb? Well, how's the hauler gonna, I mean, we can't guarantee a CPI increase with, not being able to predict or control our own disposal fees. I don't think that's a fair ask in a bid like this, that somehow we're gonna be able to see that far in the future. Like I said, that landfill surcharges starts in January 1 and goes for 4 years at 45 cents a year. and then continues on after that with a rate increase every year after the 4th year. So that's not going away, and it's gonna be a significant, it'll be more than the landfill fee itself, increase itself.
I don't think this is something we're gonna solve today, but we do have till August. Let me look at the timeline again. Responses but due back to bidders, so sort of any questions that you have for us, we're supposed to get back to you by August 23rd. So I would say that would be sort of like, let's get together and we'll sort of respond to.
Yeah, that question is, would you consider a different model?
Yeah.
Like with the city taking ownership or allowing
Yeah.
a material recovery fee for recyclables? To be able to, for a hauler to be able to guarantee some sort of annual rate increase threshold.
Does that sound fair, Dan? We'll take this offline and get back to them.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I was checking out the bear thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can only imagine that's huge for you guys.
right,
That's
yeah.
huge, especially over here. You guys still have the big bear that comes over this mountain over here and trashes.
I feel like they're everywhere, so
Mainly.
maybe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're definitely coming through on that. And so in this outline, you guys are wanting, like, quotes on being able to offer all free sizes. I mean, these guys they created their own retrofit. I have to go out and buy them. And 32 is a very uncommon size. So is that a commonality amongst you guys? Are you guys really open to see? I have a bunch of 30 gallons that I can totally provide, but I certainly don't have enough for every single person in this town. But I'd really like to know if 32 is a hot spot for bear containers, but.
I mean, I'm not opposed to 30-gallon, you know.
Okay.
We don't have a bear ordinance, it's been discussed, but there is no mandate for people to buy bear-proof containers, but if you have them, please let us know and make that available for folks to buy.
Right, certainly.
You know.
Yeah, that's easy enough. They wouldn't, the 30s, they don't have wheels though.
You know, I think
So
maybe-
I'd include that for you guys, so you guys would know, be able to
Cool.
give people a heads up on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that'll actually work out because a lot of folks have bought bear-proof containers in the last few months just because it's been so bad. So if we go with one of your containers or one of your guys' containers, I don't know, because they've already spent, you know, $100 on a container, now we're telling them to buy something else.
Yeah, as long as you guys don't walk the line that Boulder did where it becomes a requirement, because they got the committee involved, and so it had to be an
Yeah.
absolutely bear certified container where you go to the north entrance of Yellowstone.
Mm.
You see all of the containers there. I think even
I've went there, yeah.
one version of theirs is still there on display to show you like what bears can do to trash cans. But they fill it with rotten meat and it has to survive a set amount of time, and that it gets the stamp of approval. If it becomes that into the ordinance, that's kind of hard to come by because some people just do bear proof.
Well, that's where.
Or bear
we always say bear
resistant.
resistant, you never
Yeah.
say bear proof.
Yep.
They don't exist.
Because when you start hitting that, and
Okay.
that's in there. Also on commercial, I was fuzzy on that. This is just residential. Okay, cool. Cool. And then also, unless you guys had something on that, you guys cool on the bear thing?
Yeah, the one thing, that was kind of the question, whether it was gonna be mandatory or not, because as a hauler, you would not want to see the city roll out non-bear and a year later say, no, now we want you to provide all bear containers, and you just went out and bought non-bear containers.
I can only imagine, even for you guys, like, I don't know if you guys have a bunch of them on stock, but it takes some time to get those containers in such a large quantity too. So I don't think we have enough time. If you guys were implementing this come next year, I wouldn't have enough time to get enough for everybody. But it'd be
Okay.
nice to know in advance, if it's certainly a direction.
And I think it's a good question. you know, depending too on the size, like Boulder, it's pretty much what Broadway and West, where it's required, and,
Yeah,
you know, and I don't know that that's
I don't
a
think that's possible.
similar issue here, that we have them, is it everywhere, or, would you make it every resident, or would you be north of here and south of there, I don't know, I'm guessing it'd just be.
There's a
If,
handful of them that come over here and back here, but they're moving inwards. I've heard catch of one over by the high school, but I don't know what seriously.
but right now, we don't have any ordinance whatsoever.
Yeah, the bid's assuming that, I'm sorry, the RFP is assuming that it'll be the resident's responsibility to get a bear-resistant container if that's necessary. So I think that's where we're staying at this point. I mean, that's what it says.
Yeah.
But, you know, we do need to figure out, we will figure out what do we do with all the residents who already have bear-proof containers that you guys might not be able to pick up.
Yeah, you certainly open Pandora's box when you start implementing that containment. Then Boulder, it was quite an issue there. There's some people that would complain because they've never seen a bear for 50 years they've lived there, and they're, you know, you had the senior citizens on fixed incomes, and so it was just like this back and forth stuff, so it's always good to know if it becomes a big deal. On that, are you guys good on the bear thing? I was curious, I've just heard some chatter, it's not in here, but Boulder has the trash tax. Are you guys even talking about that? Or are you guys not talking about it? Hopefully not talking about it? Because nobody wants tax?
Talked about it.
Cool.
What's
All I need
your,
to know.
what's your concern?
I just don't like dealing with the trash tax. I don't like more taxes that I have to, because I mean, we have to handle taxes on our own. I have to bill my residents, my customers, that trash tax, then I have to turn around and pay the city of Boulder the tax. And so when it comes to my plate, having to explain it to a customer, you know, having to explain another tax on top of the taxes that they're already paying, whether it be from their grocery bill or their just yearly income taxes, stuff like that, I just don't like doing it. I don't like doing it. It's I guess a personal standpoint. I know it benefits the recycle center, and it's done some really great things. I just don't like dealing with it and explaining it to everybody, and nobody likes it. They get mad about it, so.
We have just one comment too on, you talk about the composting facility, you say it has to go to a CDPHE certified facility, but that doesn't address the EAB issue. Because you can be a CDPHE certified composting facility, but not like we're the only certified EAB processing facility in the county. And that begets a comment I want to make, and this is.
So you're saying it should be mentioned?
That it has to be also, it has to go to an EAB certified facility.
Right, because it can't leave the county, right?
Can't leave the county, and that we've brought this up before, and it's not new. When Lafayette bid the second time, and when Louisville bid this last time, we're no longer composting it, we're a transfer site, but we've invested a lot of money in that site, and we're not gonna be beat over the head by our own facilities. So when Lafayette and Louisville both bid, we said we would not accept material from municipal contracts at our facility. Because in Lafayette and both Louisville, they pick up the branches separate from the food waste. And then they take the branches to a facility in Public Works facility in Lafayette, and now there's a facility gonna be on Louisville's property, they're gonna process the branches. So they've gotta make 2 trips through there to pick up the food and the branches. And that's just, one for us, one of the few competitive advantages we have. We've invested a lot in that facility over the 14 years. And we're just not gonna be beat over the head by our own facility for somebody that hasn't made those investments to be able to provide a competitive advantage, being able to mix branches and food waste together like we do.
So then how does it work there? Do they mix food waste, grass clippings and leaves?
Yes.
Okay.
And
if
then
they're-
any of the woody waste then has to be bundled and set next to the, in fact, in Lafayette, they throw the branches away other than 2 days a year. They have two times a year, they do a cleanup and they pick up branches, they take them to the public works site. But if you want to have branches recycled, you can't put them in the cart, you put them next to the trash container. On an every other week basis, they get thrown away.
But as part of the trash pickup?
Yes.
Okay.
And then in Louisville, Republic did the same concept, and Louisville pushed back and said, no, you're not going to throw the branches away. So they've agreed in their contract to pick them up separately, but compostable streams. And then they've negotiated to use a site in Louisville, belongs to the city, to drop the branches, and then they will periodically come and grind them. And after they're grind them to meet Emerald Ash Board requirements, they'll haul them to a day one.
So did McDonald's Farms stop their transfer function?
They can't, that's outside of Boulder County, that's in Weld
Have
County.
they had approval to, for those Lafayette Louisville?
They do, but that's where the food waste, leaves, and grass go. But the branches don't go there, just the food waste and the leafy waste.
You get our compost.
Question on one of the options for pricing. You've asked for ownership in one
Yeah.
scenario. Is that a requirement?
I don't-
As part of the bid? I mean, would you be non-responsive if we didn't provide that option? Or-
Is it for the ownership of the bins that we're going, I don't know really the price difference, like what beneficial, how does it benefit the town of Lyons? What would you recommend, or, I mean, I think it was Lafayette who actually owns their own bins or something like that. But-
The reason that even came about is they got, when the tax was in place for the recycle center, they had more money at the front end of that, and so Lafayette got a low-interest loan from the county to buy their recycle carts.
Okay.
And then when they bid it the second time, they put that in there as an option of, kind of like what you're doing. Well,
Yeah.
what if,
Yeah.
what would your price be if at the end of the contract period that we owned the compost cart? Well, the hauler that won that last contract said, well, we'll even not include just the compost cart, we'll even include the trash cart in our rate. So then at the end of 7 years, the town of, or the city of Lafayette would own
Right.
own those cards.
Yeah.
So it's more problematic, well, I mean, as a hauler, we'd rather own our own containers, because then if anything happens to a bare
Sure.
container or otherwise,
Yeah.
you know, we're responsible for the replacement. The wheel axle breaks, the wheel falls off, the lid hinge breaks, you know, we're responsible for,
Yeah.
you know, taking care of that ASAP. So we would rather provide our own equipment. but-
Sure. Yeah.
In the other contracts we've had with Lafayette and Louisville, they require a bond, and this kind of falls into that concept of the owning the carts.
Mhm.
That if you went down that path, you would probably be better to require a bond, because then if a hauler borrowed the money for the carts and then defaulted, and they've used the carts for collateral, then the lending entity is gonna be first in line to own the carts, not the city. So if you went down that path of choosing we wanna own the carts in the end, then I would suggest that you do require a bond for that. So just kind of to make sure I fully understand this, so from when we first started talking about composting, so what the bidding would be then trash and recycle in the unit. And then compost would be similar to Lafayette's, where residents would be required to have it, but would buy it by the amount that they've subscribed to, is that?
Yeah, I think we want to show the board those different pricing models. So if there
It
is,
does say unit-based.
yeah,
Because the way that Louisville bid the last one, I guess, we weren't in favor of, because if you embed the compost too, the only difference between a 32-gallon resin or a 6496 is the amount of trash they generate. But if you have to embed the recycling and the composting and you have 100% increment, then you're double or tripling. It's not just the cost of the trash. It's not fair to the 64s and 96s because you're doubling and tripling the cost of, for example, composting. The cost is the same to any of the three residents, but the difference between one level and another is only in the volume of trash they're generating. So it's almost making the hammer harder in that model that Louisville used. And I don't know where that concept came up. They wanted to have 100% increment for everything, but in my eyes, it's not fair because the only piece of the three materials that's different is the trash, but you're doubling and tripling that increment as you're going to a larger container. Whereas not all three materials are doubling and tripling, just one of the three materials in actual quantity. So we wouldn't be a proponent of that business model because in our eyes it's not fair. For years the unit in pay-as-you-throw, for as long as I've been in this business, like almost 31 years, has been trash and recycling embedded, never trying to embed the compost. Again, it's just, to me, it's unfair in terms of why it's there. Everybody has roughly, on average, the same amount of recycling, the same amount of composting, and the only difference is how much trash you generate.
So can you set it up where the resident buys a 96-gallon trash and then everybody gets the 32 recycling or 32 compost, or do you have to get all the three large
Well,
bins if you?
typically, most communities want everybody to have the biggest recycling bin they can have. So you would say you can have up to a 96. So if somebody chooses an empty nester and they're one person and they don't need a 96 and it won't fit in their garage or whatever, they have the option of getting a 32 or 64, but they can have up to a 96 and the price doesn't change.
right.
And so, and then trash has that natural, you buy the trash by the 32-gallon unit. So that's the
Right.
hammer or the carrot, however
Yep.
you want to. But we just think the fairest way for compost is to have people buy it by the unit. Because again, if you embed that 96 and you have to have it inside that unit, you're doubling and tripling the unit, which then exacerbates the difference between the lowest and the highest. Not fair to the 64s and 96s because again, one material is different, not all three. That's the first time I'd ever seen that in Lafayette in all my years, to see trying to embed compost in the unit.
So by that, you're saying, so like, you'd have to triple the cost in the trash, right?
Yes.
To compensate for the cost.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And you have the
only
cost,
imagine
you
how
have the
that
cost
goes.
of all three materials in your unit.
Right, right, in your pricing,
Yeah.
yeah.
So is that fair to families? Is it, some families are and pay-as-you-throw operates on the law of averages. And so unfortunately, if you're in a community of everybody goes to 32s, that's problematic. Because you've got to raise the bottom. So then it's no longer now 32s, at the next time the contract comes around and you have 60+% of your people as 32s, you're not gonna have the same rates as you did before.
So, talking about the costs and not knowing how many 32s or 96s we're gonna have for trash, how do you guys determine the cost for each resident?
Everybody has to do their own calculations to come up with what they think's
What
gonna
they think.
happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Historical balances.
And as far as like costs changing over time, how is that done with other communities? Or is this gonna be, I know the contract, I think we said was like a 7-year contract, is that gonna be a locked-in price for 7 years?
No, that's why we talked about where the CPI right now in this marketplace is, not, I don't think a reasonable ask of a hauler unless you wanna take ownership of the recyclables. You're gonna get that is our wild card.
Yeah.
It's our biggest disposal fee right now, not
Yeah.
trash,
Yeah.
not compost, because compost doesn't have the same volume. The recycle has a lot of volume and a high tonnage rate,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Is the tonnage rate of recycling now higher than trash?
Oh, by far. It's more than
That's
double
really flip.
what our trash,
Yep.
almost 2.5 times.
Yeah, I haven't been there as long as you. I've only been around 7 years. And when I started, it was that really low slipping. And within 2 years of me being here, it went away. It became 0. And then now, boom, the 31's the biggest jump I've seen.
There was a time when Jeff Callahan, when he was still at the, what was his title?
Division manager.
Division manager, he talked us into separating commercial recycle, doing separate cardboard routes. And so that, at that time, we were getting $35 a ton for commercial single stream. Now we're paying 15. It has flipped that far.
Just told you, Brent, a little bit longer.
I wish I could see the end in sight, but man, I just,
Yeah.
I can't.
Something. It really is.
The US is gonna have to develop its own facilities to process our own materials, but how long is it gonna take us to build that infrastructure, and where are they located?
And the material count, material makeup of the material that they're collecting is constantly changing. And that's the biggest variable. What you get 2 years ago in the bin is different than what you get 2 years from now.
I served on a panel that Lisa Scumontz with Sarah, I don't know if you're familiar with her, she's a waste consultant, but she was working for the state, so she asked me to participate on this panel. And so they had Evraz, the steel manufacturer, the representative from Coors, and so we're really talking about how do we, get more people to locate in Colorado to process recyclables, kind of one of those, the real conversation. And, unbeknownst to me, I'm not in the freight business, but it was a real eye-opener to me that the problem that Colorado has is freight coming in is a lot higher because we have no material going out. We're a state with very little manufacturing. And so hence, nobody locates here or is willing to build a plant here to manufacture here because the freight in and out of Colorado is too high. And so then that became, it was kind of shocking to when, see these steel manufacturers go, we can ship steel to Tennessee cheaper than we can go to Cheyenne, Wyoming. And because of that, you come in full and you leave empty. So how do we solve that problem? That's one of our huge hurdles as a state. And everybody in the room had no answer to that question. We God, jaws kind of dropped, you going, that's just a long-term, how do we fix that? I mean, even if you build facilities, how do you get somebody to come here, guarantee them the tonnage? We're so spread out as a state that, the Front Range is always the easiest to deal with, the Fort Collins, Denver, Colorado Springs, but beyond that, it becomes a lot harder to. So I'm with you, Dan, I'm hoping there's a shorter solution, but.
Any questions? I've got a few things that I'd like to bring up. If folks don't have questions. So we have a bag program here in the town of Lyons, so that people, and it's mentioned in the RFP that there's between 8 and 24 residents who, rather than having this monthly bill for a bin, they just buy a bag from various haulers, and it's very cheap, and it's cost effective for them. So in your proposals, I just want to explain, we don't have to talk about it here, but just highlight how might your company, deal with that little complexity.
So just a clarification question. What are those folks doing with the recycling?
I don't know. We have a recycling facility here, so they might be taking it over there.
So in the future, like how,
So-
because
I could probably
everyone
answer that
else.
for you, because they're
Are
most
they
likely
one
my
way?
customers.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I know that they would be
Like,
taking
yeah.
it to the recycling center
Mhm.
now in town, but as you move forward, how do you create equity with others who are required to
'Cause
pay
it's
for the
embedded.
full suite of services? When those folks are going, oh, well, I'm gonna compost my backyard, I'm gonna take my recycling to work, whatever. So, sure, it's a valid question, but what is the town thinking they're doing with this material that the town is asking everyone else to manage in a very specific way?
Right.
Boulder still requires those pretty big bag customers to have recycling compost service.
Yeah, and we would ask.
Is that what you would do?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I think we're talking about just, those people are grandfathered in, there's no, we wouldn't allow that to continue to happen.
The people that have it are the ones that toot the loudest horn. I highly doubt new resident coming in is gonna wanna jump on that
Okay.
bandwagon.
So
They
still
really,
a
it's
very
not
small number of
something,
people.
Yeah.
like he was saying, it'd be a grandfather thing, and I mean, you have a really valid point, and thank you, 'cause I wasn't even looking at it that direction when I really should have, because I mean, it comes back to, embedding compost, it's not fair. If other people are putting forth for that, and, they wanna save $1, everybody wants to save $1, so, I'd have to hit the books, because those people are mine. I don't like that service, but they really like it. And, that's, gotta keep people happy, but at the same time, you've got to weigh all the options, and so that's something, yeah.
Well, that's like that.
Have to crunch some numbers and hit the books pretty hard to make sure, because I know they've called me about it to ensure that this is getting added into the proposal in some way, shape, or form, but it's gonna be hard, given what she has presented here, because I didn't think of it from that. At first, I was like, oh yeah, why not? Like, just skip them on the utility bill, we could provide some kind of form of, hey, this is the service that they're providing, like I could provide like a sales receipt or something of them purchasing the bags, but looking at it this way is all residents are kind of putting into the pot, with the recycle, so it'd be really hard to do that. I will find a way to put it in my bid somehow, if it's possible.
Yeah, and we've talked about just sort of brainstorming with the SFC, the chair of, we've talked about, maybe that's something that the town of Lyons takes on is the managing of the bags and the issuing of bags to make sure that we don't have customers sort of bypassing the pay-as-you-throw program, and then now they're just buying bags, right, like,
Yeah, I mean, that's probably how you'd have to do it, is you guys would have to manage the bags in some way, shape, or form.
yeah.
But the whole point around it is a color. I mean, you guys are kind of fading out of it. I don't know if you guys even still offer it.
We offer it.
Yeah, it's, everybody kind of has their own color. That's a big thing too, but here wouldn't be a problem, obviously, because whoever gets it, it's gonna be their color. But what I'd probably say you'd have to do is, you'd have to put a surcharge or some kind on it to compensate for the recycle and stuff like that, so it's gonna increase the cost for them.
You really can't put it in the bag, because we have people that can go 2 years on a box of bags, and then every other week you're picking up recycling compost. You
Yep.
can't do that.
Yeah.
It's gotta be,
And man, they pack those bags too. They pack them, and it's kind of for them. For us, it's a little easier to a degree because I got people that just get out, grab stuff as it is. They're more automated than we are, but those bags, man, they pack them and they are dense. I've had to throw a few of them. We've got a lot of them over in the Blue Mountain area over there, and man, they're heavy and they're huge, and you know that could be a whole year's worth of trash for all I know. But then, like he said, every other week they'll have that. So compost or recycle, they ask surcharge. We would,
Yeah, so you'd have to, you have occasional trash, I guess, that's what that would be, an occasional trash customer. That would still be required to have the recycling and compost on an every other weekly basis. And now you're asking actually for yet another pricing scenario.
Right.
So I guess we need clarity if that's actually.
Yeah, let's clarify that, because I had a different thought, that I didn't think we were being required to do recycling. So let's, because like, you guys, won't not recoup any money, so.
So to the effect that if you do the bag program, you're not entitled to use the recycle or the compost program?
We'll get back to you.
yeah, that just doesn't seem
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Because you're making some pretty hard delineations of service, which is counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, and anecdotally, we know how that'll go over in town.
Well, what we're hearing is, we don't need it.
Yeah.
We don't need recycling and compost.
well, they don't need
From those
recycling
people.
right now because you guys have that roll off. But when it becomes,
From now, we'll still have it.
They'll
It's the
still-
counties.
oh, yeah. Let us know.
Do you see any chance that the town would go out to put it on the ballot versus voted in by town board? Do you go through all this process and then, there's,
There was a discussion a couple of work meetings ago about that, wasn't there?
this is an interesting scenario where you've got that drop-off center. That changes the dynamic considerably, because there's a lot of people in Lyons that use that, and it's free. I mean, they don't see any cost in driving there, they drive past it anyway in their daily activities, and so now you're gonna make me pay for it at the curb when I do it for free now. That's probably the biggest hot button.
Well, and I think you make a good observation of, is there any will, I guess, from the elected board to put this to a vote of the residents instead of the elected representatives of the residents? It sounds like from the discussion that perhaps some who understand the nuances of pay-as-you-throw and the difficulties, like all of these challenges, right, of thinking through these scenarios, are more hesitant to do that, of like, this is not a simple yes/no question because of many of the things that have been discussed at this meeting. However, there's 7, and so it takes 4 to say, yeah, this is worthwhile putting to the voters, and so I think it's possible. Probable, I don't know, but.
Personally, I'd feel like, just some of the feedback that I've heard too, it'd be nice to offer it to the residents to choose how they, if they wanna keep it a free market just with the bid, kinda like how Boulder is, where we still offer this, but we're both still allowed here.
It's regulated instead of single hauler.
Yeah, so it still gives them the option. I mean, there was a gentleman with the Thornton Trash Company, he told it to me the best, and you wanna make people really angry, you start messing with their trash, and telling them how they have to handle it. And when you start telling people that they absolutely have to go with so-and-so, you know, I think it kinda works a little better maybe in Lafayette. I don't go there, so I don't know Will, but, you know, they kinda just go under the assumption that the city has offered it, cause it's on their bill. But I mean, so Republic has that one, yeah, I just don't go there. But Republic has it, if it was out, like, oh no, cause I mean, just anything you've heard now, it's this one-way or Western, and everybody's tooting their horn about it. When you give them the option to choose between somebody, they're a lot happier, and it's sustainable. If it's working in Boulder, it
It
would
works
work.
in Boulder County in a regulated environment.
Yeah,
As
and
opposed to a single hauler.
and sustainably, it's working because you're doing the recycle and the compost. I mean, obviously, the way that Bryce has presented it today is conducive on, you know, unit-based and compost, embedding recycle with the trash, but it's still giving residents the options to choose what they want. And with that being said, I mean, you will not be able to put it in the utility bill, we'd have to bill individually, but at that same time, I'd still be able to offer single stack. I'd be able to offer that to people, and it's not going to slam everybody in the town on the recycling and compost end. Not everybody is going to be accountable for recycle, even if they wanna drop it off at that county roll-off. You know what I'm saying? So, just a personal standpoint, I think I highly doubt that has any effect in this meeting, but
No, it's,
I like free market. That's how I don't get squashed.
right. That's valid. This was brought to me a couple times by a few residents about just these enormous driveways, and I think it's one way that they do like they'll like
It's
go
always me.
they'll go like pick up their trash from their garage rather than on the curbside. So, I mean, I'm just thinking from your perspective, how do you build a model where you're taking into account all these specific needs of these residents on, hey, you know, I've always had my trash picked up at my garage because I can't roll it up this massive hill. So that is something that residents have come to me with concerns about. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that we will for sure get pushback if we're requiring folks to haul their trash up their driveway and then get picked up at curbside.
We're not into what he's describing. You
Yeah,
can't drive a
unfortunately, when you-
full-size
Yeah.
collection truck up somebody's driveway. You got it over culverts and.
Yeah, we have to walk most of those, and
So that's
It's
a
a
okay.
pretty, and they pay extra for that service.
Oh,
Unfortunately, most of them do. Some of them were kind of, you know, there's some folks that are
I don't-
handicapped or something, and someone grandfathered in a discount for them to help them out. Or, you know, we had a long-standing driver in Lyons, and he really took care of his people here, and so he trained somebody in here, and it just kind of carried on. But those people, it's an additional fee, and unfortunately, just what I've dealt with over the last year or so, it's just when you start standardizing everything, customization goes out the window.
Mhm.
You just, you know, it's not fair. It's, you know, automated versus physically getting out of the truck is a huge thing too. That's why Mick, the owner, he insists on not allowing me to buy automated trucks, because he wants me to keep hiring people that are gonna run it. And, you know, it gives us that opportunity to do that. But when we have to go single hauler, I mean, I made note, I'll definitely evaluate that, see how we'd be able to squeeze it, but I don't see it being possible, because especially if you guys are billing it, you know, you'd have to personally talk to the driver. I'll hit it on the bid, I'll look at it, how I can touch base on those, because I know who they all are too. One of the biggest ones on that is gonna be this road over here, what is it, Longs Peak Drive? It goes up over here, and then there's a bunch of houses up at the top, it's like a cul-de-sac, and then there's a driveway that just goes up, and there's houses that branch off of it, there's maybe 380 to 5 houses off of that. That one's a rough one, and we physically walk it to grab it, and that driveway is about this steep, and it's super dangerous. And we won't do it in the winter, because the ice is too dangerous, so they have to bring it down to us. But some of those just equipment limitations completely draw the line on that as well, especially for them. My truck, the one that comes in here is too big for it anyways, and theirs doesn't make it.
So big concern with residents is just the smell of compost. I mean, if it's getting picked up every 2 weeks, what are your guys' perspective on every 2 week pickup of compost?
Everywhere else.
That's
Yeah.
my thought too. That's my thought too.
It's kind of like anything, once you change it, it takes about 3 to 6 months to get over the change.
Sure.
And you get a lot of pushback and whining, and then after about 6 months, it all just kind of dissipates. But you just gotta brace yourself for,
Yeah.
and it's the fact it's change. It's not any one specific thing, everybody has their thing, but it's change. I just like the way it was.
I'm less familiar with the 8 units or less state statute. Is that something that you are all familiar with? And have you worked with communities that have larger than 8 units?
Most communities, it's the term of, more often than not, it's described as a single-family home
Yeah.
versus a common area collection. So if you have 8 units or less, I mean, you could have either. You could have each unit, it's a duplex, each unit has their own service, but if the 2 of them are commingling their waste together, then it's not a single-family home. They're not in the program because they're not single-family homes. So that's the determining factor, is the waste containers for one unit or not. So
If
we have,
somebody's on a dumpster right now, we're not under any obligation to scrap that. I'd never heard that before.
because even in Lewis, I think it's, they're not, it's one, more than one unit, they're not required to be in the program. They could be, but then in order to be in the program, each unit has to have their own service. So it's kind of that, it's single unit or common area collection is the more the definition
So
of
the
what.
8 is really moot.
That's what you know, for example, Longmont has the right to pick up anything less than 8 units by state statute.
The right, but not the responsibility.
Yes, they could choose not to, but they also do dumpsters. So they're servicing those. Yeah, all these, whether it's Lafayette or Louisville, it's more determining factor is it or is it not service for a single unit?
That actually is kind of an interesting question, because we probably, I don't know what they're saying, but I bet there's a few single families that multiple their trash with a dumpster scenario, just like there's a few families that limit their trash with a bag scenario.
So in that case, that would fall under the ordinance because they are a single family home.
Yeah,
That would go away for them.
right.
They'd no longer be able to share a dumpster
Because they're being paying as part of the system.
Yep.
Keep your dumpster.
on that is Steamboat Valley Road, right at the fence line, you know, where the road continues. Is that the city line? Or are you guys recognizing people on Steamboat?
We recognize Steamboat Valley and
Valley
Horizon.
Road, all the way up it?
Vasquez.
So they're the ones with the dumpster, the people on Steamboat. Oh, okay, Steamboat, right there at the park, there's like fences,
Up to where it becomes a private road.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dirt road, no,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
All
But
right.
Vasquez, yeah.
and Horizon,
Yeah, those guys certainly, yeah, definitely, yeah, we've got,
I think there's a dumpster over here. When I start thinking about it, there's a few.
yeah, we've
One
got
on
a
Old Main.
community dumpster up there on Steamboat, up past the private, and actually, there's a Western that keeps emptying it. Like, all right,
Seriously?
whatever. I don't know
That's nice.
how, it's also keyed, so I don't know how he got a key either.
Where we are including well, apparently we have just one HOA here, technical HOA. That's Stone Canyon, the one East Corridor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's in scope, but they are definitely fighting it for sure. They do not want anything part of this, but it's gonna come down to cost, I think, for them. But just to let you know that we are trying to include HOAs.
The high school is trying to go, they did a request for it too, is that going away?
I'm not.
Someone,
Is it what?
oh, okay, someone was talking to me about it. I'll double check.
That'd be your hood.
Oh, the high school, you mean HOA?
Yeah, the little neighborhood, somebody was asking me about it. Is
Yeah, I
it,
think
what is
you-
it, Lions?
Lions Valley Park.
Yeah, I had the,
Is that to your point, is that a?
Technical HOA, I don't know, there's some paperwork and stuff that goes along with HOAs.
Do you have any trailer parks here?
Not since it's flood.
No, we do have
You have the one
one.
at the base of Loxby.
The neighbor dumpster. And a
Would
banner.
they be required?
And a bear.
That's right.
But it's like one now.
TV.
What was your question?
Or would they be required to be in the program, have individual service at each trailer?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Because in Boulder County, they hold them in at the end of the current term of their contracts.
Well, but that's the same, that's a common dumpster for, not just those maybe 3 trailer houses there, but the Chick Goose apartments as well.
So that'd be, but how do you decide to treat
Yeah,
that?
so
Do you
yeah,
treat
you
the
can't
homes as
chop that
homes
in
or?
half.
I
It
don't
would have to
know.
be dumpster supervised.
Well, I think it's a property management company, which just brings up another, another oddball scenario. You know, River Cliff is one of the units, I'm trying to think of how many we have.
Well, that's not a single family houses.
No. And so that's why it's exempted, because that's state statute.
Would be 1 for state statute and then 2 because it's common area collection. They're not individual units with their own service.
And there are some, Kim, can you talk about the alleyways in Lions? There are some, in addition to curbside pickup, there would be some requirements for behind houses.
Well, I think that, again, might be maybe, you know, part of an educational and outreach piece, right? In terms of where pickup is most easiest for the haulers. Is it going down the old town area has more of the alley structure, right? And I think that's where some tend to keep, I don't know, you know, where some tend to keep their garbage, so it would just be an education thing, I suspect, of working down this road of, you know, the truck comes down the street or comes down that alley, and that's where your stuff needs to be
I'd imagine there'd be some kind of newsletter that we'd have to cover. I know there's an alleyway over there where, right, when it starts branching this way. Wish I had a map in front of me, then I could tell you all the streets.
Yeah.
But, the road starts going this way, there's an alleyway this way, but we can't drive all the way down this alleyway, cause there's, he's got some kind of plumbing or underground piping of some kind, and the big trucks, if you drive over it, you damage it, and it's had to been replaced, many times, because, I don't know who's doing it, but
So you.
we have to come in this side, pick up 2 people, then we go around this way. I mean, obviously, we have a ton of people, not a ton, but a good amount of people to make it worth it. But then you come out this way, and then we back down the alley to as far as we can go, and then go this way. But generally speaking, it's kind of, I mean, Boulder's a little different, but just kind of go down each alleyway and each main road and pick people up, and just be watching out for something special like that. Because if you didn't know any better, another hauler would just drive straight down that alleyway and damage that piping. So yeah, probably a newsletter saying, hey,
Yeah.
these streets, and it'd probably only highlight questionable areas, but it'd be something we'd have to talk probably closer to the actual happening of a switchover.
Yeah, we can work with you guys on figuring out the routes and stuff like that. Cool, that was all the things that I had. Any other questions?
Just another clarification on page 5 under containers and delivery. You talk about the containers must have wheels and attached loops, and the ability to be picked up by automation equipment and requiring all automation equipment. Or maybe why is that in there like that?
That's a good point. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a hard requirement.
So would you anticipate in your contract, like for example, in Louisville, Lafayette, they have a strict and written policies for non-performance and penalties thereof, and spell those out and all those things?
It's been a while since I've looked at those things. I don't really haven't honestly given much thought to those, but yeah, I think some performance measures is applicable. I don't know the specifics though, so I'd have to read those. What are your?
Well, I mean, I think it's in your best interest to have, some sort of, not only performance standards, but
Yeah.
penalties thereof if you
Yeah.
don't meet those standards.
Yeah, of course.
And, so you've got some teeth to your requirements, not saying, well, this is a requirement of the contract, but we have no teeth if somebody doesn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Right, definitely help if we got some clarification on the model,
Yeah.
because it'd make it easier for us to bid, or,
Okay.
What do you use is, what do you think the tonnage is rate's gonna be at the Boulder County Recycle Center? You guess wrong, you're eating it.
Right.
That's a tough one.
I think it's like the end of next week, I'll have responses to all of those discussion items, and I'll post that to the bid site, so I think you're notified, right? So we will have that. I will also document all the questions within the next week. So if there's additional questions that you want me to answer, you're supposed to submit those by Friday. So I will try to get the questions at least written up today. That way, if there's additional questions, please get those in by Friday. That way I can work on answering those next week. Awesome. Well, it was nice meeting you all.
Thank
You as
you.
well.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming all the way out here.
Did you type all that for me? Thank you. Oh, that's my pen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering.
That's why I was typing in red. Oh
no.
man, this is not very fun.
in the